Welcome to the Property Perspective Podcast, a podcast where we talk about different perspectives on property, the industry, and anything we find interesting. I'm your host, Nick Cowdy. I am a real estate professional and the principal at Cowdy Real Estate, a boutique real estate firm here in Christchurch. Hope you enjoy the show. All right, so today on the show we have Dr. Jessica Halliday, who is an art historian and always been quite involved with the architectural scene around Christchurch. Welcome to the show.
Oh, kia ora, Nick. Nice to be here.
That's good. Now tell us a bit about your background.
My background. So, how far back shall we go? I was born here in Waitaha, Canterbury. So I guess this is home.
Yes.
But I was born in the Selwyn district. But Christchurch has always been that place, I guess, that I've known my whole life. It's funny, I was talking to a team member the other day about our first memories of public space.
Yes.
And my first memory of public space is there's really two. One's Cathedral Square.
Yes.
I remember being there for the Springbok Tour protests in 1981 when I was quite little. And then the Christchurch Town Hall.
Yes, of course.
I remember that from, because you're there from such a young age. Well, at least people my generation have been, because it's older than me, so it's been there my whole life and lots of different life stages.
Yeah.
So born here, grew up
I remember,
here.
sorry, just to interject, was my memories were like a chamber choir thing at school and Hootie and the Blowfish.
Oh, there you go. You see, we've all got it. I'm not telling you about some of mine. They're shameful. The things you do when you're a teenager. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Ice House. But that's who I remember seeing at the town hall when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, I've got a background in art history. I studied art history and politics at the University of Canterbury, and then kept doing some politics at Vic for a while, and then came back and landed on a thesis topic which was about the design and construction of the beehive and looking at the role of formalism in late modernism.
Right.
And wrote a really detailed history and put the beehive in its architectural and political context,
Of course.
connecting my art history and politics backgrounds. But that was a whole palaver because my thesis is permanently embargoed. So if you want to read it, you have to make an application to the Dean of Postgraduate Studies at the University of Canterbury to be able to read it.
Is that due to national security?
Yeah, it is.
Ah.
Yep, it was a big surprise for me
Yes.
because I started the research before 9/11 and submitted my thesis after 9/11.
Right.
And the whole context had completely changed. So, yeah, it was an interesting time trying to submit my thesis in the face of opposition from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet,
Yeah.
who didn't want me to submit it in full. But then the university, the head of law at the time, just spent 5 months negotiating with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. Just as well I didn't want to be an academic, because otherwise it just would have been a nightmare.
Right. So, and then you've landed on doing Open Christchurch now amongst many other things.
Yeah, Open Christchurch is the largest activity of Te Pūtahi Centre for Architecture and City Making, which is an organisation that's over 10 years old.
Right.
It has its roots in post-quake Christchurch, and we established it to run Festa, the Festival of Transitional Architecture, after the earthquakes, and then that ran for 5 iterations, and then we were about to do the 6th and final iteration of Festa in October 2020 when COVID and lockdown hit.
Yes.
But by that point, we had already started trialling Open Christchurch.
Yeah.
So we trialled it first in winter 2019 as a concept.
Yeah.
So the whole concept is a really simple concept. Open Christchurch. We open a selection of the city's most exceptional works of architecture to the public. Over 90% of it is free to access, and what isn't free is very, very low cost.
Yes.
At usually $5 a ticket plus booking fee. And that is simply in place for a couple of reasons I can tell you about later. But anyway, we open up all these works of architecture.
Yes.
And the whole idea, there's really two reasons we do it. One, we love architecture.
Yep.
And we think more people should understand and appreciate the role of architecture in our lives and in society. And in particular, its ability for great design to improve lives. And then the second reason is that we think, and we understand from talking to people who've been to Open Christchurch, that by having this wonderful excuse to just explore all these different parts of the city, that we're fostering a greater sense of belonging and connection in the city. So those are really the two things that drive us.
Must be quite a lot of work to get all these institutions and buildings and private owners to agree to open their doors.
It is. So they're all opening their doors over one weekend. It's always the first weekend. Well, it's always set by the first Sunday in May. So last year it was the 30th of April and the 1st of May. This year it's the 6th and 7th of May. Next year, 2024, it's the 4th and 5th of May. And yes, it is a lot of work because this year we're opening 52 buildings. And that represents 51 building partners.
Right.
Now, it's a mismatch because sometimes you have one building partner like Christ College that is opening 4 buildings, but then you've got a place like 65 Cambridge Terrace, which has 6 parties of interest that are either tenants or owners in that place, and you have to get all of them on board. So we do a huge amount of relationship building and relationship management, really, like making sure that people are happy to open their doors, which, as you know, is no small task.
It is no small task.
Yeah. But usually, I mean, from the very beginning, people have been, I think, intrigued by the opportunity. People are motivated by lots of different things.
Absolutely.
I think you've just got to go into it thinking, well, I might hear no, but that's the worst I'm going to hear. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh, that's my job.
Yeah, exactly. Like some people say no, oh, well, okay, that's fine. Someone else will say yes.
Yeah. But I think you've, like, the calibre of the buildings that you have and houses is pretty exceptional.
It is. People are incredibly generous. It blows you away how generous all these building partners are. I think they recognise the kaupapa of the event. And as I mentioned, they often do have different motivations depending on who they are. But often they really believe in the things that we believe in, those two key ideas that architecture matters, and that inviting people to explore the city changes and develops their relationship with this place.
Yeah. I mean, one that I've never gone to that I need to is the crematorium. That is such an incredible building.
So we opened that last year.
Yes.
As part of Open Christchurch last year, and we really wanted to include it this year because this year we have one of the things we're doing is paying particular homage to the work of Sir Miles Warren and Maurice Mahoney. And of course the Harewood Crematorium is one of their most significant works. But when we went to ask them about this year, they're actually closed for construction works. I don't know what they're doing, but I was really pleased that they totally got into it last year.
Yeah.
And I hope it gave them a fresh appreciation of what a gem of a building that is.
Yeah.
And that I haven't asked too closely, but hopefully they're doing really good things to it. Absolutely. I suspect it's mostly driven by heating and cooling because that place is quite hard to manage.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's glazed, single glazed, so much of it, and it's got large volumes and, yeah.
Because private houses is another thing, because usually when they're institutional buildings or public spaces, they're already ready to open up. But I know when we've opened our houses before for the other tours, it's like, it's a big deal when you sort of think, oh, take half an hour to clean up, and then a day and a half, 2 days later, you're finally ready.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing about people's generosity, in recognising that this is about a bigger purpose. And yeah, it's a huge amount. I mean, people have embraced it in lots of different ways. Some of them have used it as an excuse to kind of get their place into the condition in which they want it to be in, on a regular basis. Some people have, done commercial cleaning and gone away for the weekend and left us in charge.
Right.
Not everyone wants to be there.
Yeah.
Because, all of a sudden you've got all these strangers poking around your house, and you're not selling it.
No.
But then others really want to be there because they want to share the story of what the building means to them.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be there when our houses have been open, because I just kind of enjoyed the people that were interested in looking. Were usually interesting people for me to talk to for whatever reason. So it's always quite fun.
Yeah, that's true. I think it really depends on who the people are. I mean, some people, it doesn't suit their personality to be there, and others really embrace it and enjoy the experience of sharing their special place with others.
All sorts of people come and get involved in this, don't they?
Or you mean attend? Or
attend, yeah.
Yeah, we're always blown away by the diversity of the audience. Admittedly, we haven't had the resources to really survey them properly and get really good demographics. Hopefully we do this year. But even just turning up and looking around, they're often people I've never seen at cultural events. And people are drawn to different things. I think one of the things we try really hard with Open Christchurch is to ensure that there's something for everyone.
Yes.
That there are a range of buildings, different ages, different styles, different construction types, different scales, different locations around the city, different functions, so that people hopefully can find something in the program they want to see that they haven't seen before, or a building that they might know really, really well, but they've never spent time learning more about it.
I find that Christchurch is really interesting because I've always, like you, I've grown up here and not really realising that conservative old Christchurch has quite an important architectural history, and it's quite diverse.
Yeah, I think it's getting more diverse, and that's certainly something we endeavour to do with the program. I mean, I think Christchurch's architectural reputation from the 19th and the 20th centuries is pretty well known. The Gothic revival and the post-war modern, the Christchurch style, are fairly well established and acclaimed. But of course there's a lot more going on, when you drill down into the interwar period, or you have a look at arts and crafts, or different styles of architecture, early stripped modern works of Cecil Wood and people like that. There's lots of diversity within that tradition, within those periods. And then to these days it's is beginning to get more and more diverse. We've been really fortunate both in the people who are designing and in the people who are commissioning works of architecture.
I think the commissioning's really important, obviously, in a client that can let the architect go wild or buy into their ideas, and especially, for example, Paul O'Sullivan, their work is incredibly so well fitted to their clients, and you've got the the house is a gastro.
We've got Gus to Rob in the program. That's a Bull O'Sullivan house. And there's actually 3 Bull O'Sullivan buildings in the program this year. And in fact, Michael O'Sullivan has been a really wonderful supporter of the festival from the beginning. He opened his studio in Littleton in 2021, and it was one of the most popular to get to, and we're opening it again this year. So, and when we opened it in 2021, part of it was a construction site. So it was great dealing with the health and safety on that one.
Yeah.
But that's completed now. So if people either go back or go for the first time, they're going to see the completed 3rd level on that studio. And then the other Bull O'Sullivan building that's opening is a Tongan church in Wigram called Whanua Oemana. And that will be a surprise. It's actually a temporary building. And it's been shortlisted for the NZIA Awards, Canterbury Awards this year.
Yes.
And, you know, that's a really amazing story, and Michael will be there for part of the day. And I think it's a great opportunity to... I love seeing when architects are involved in an organisation or a group of people's whole story. You know, he could have waited until they wanted to build something permanent, but actually he's there already.
Right.
Establishing that relationship, testing ideas, learning about what's important to them, and expressing it even in a temporary building, and also making that temporary building like superb.
Right.
Yeah, you should definitely check it out.
Yeah. What's your highlights? Have you got any particular favourites, or is
what are my
putting
highlights?
you on the spot?
It is putting me on the spot because you know, when Erica Austin on our team and I, we work with a building council who help us select the buildings in the first place.
Right.
So there's a group of experts. And then Erica and I go out and meet nearly everybody. If the building's been in our program before, we might not meet them on site again, but there's always chats. And so you get to know the places and the people really, really well. So choosing favourites is really difficult. But of course I have to do it. I'd say the coastal architecture is really interesting. We've made a deliberate effort to select a group of buildings that you can go and see in New Brighton, and also you can pop out to Mount Pleasant. And so that would be the New Brighton Surf Life Saving Club, the Hepuna Tai Moana, and the South Brighton Surf Life Saving Club, and St Faith's in New Brighton. That's a heritage church, an interwar heritage church. So they're all open, and like that completely different, that contrast between the 100 years nearly that's happened between the Gothic Revival Church and today, and you see how differently we respond to context now, and the materials are completely different, the ideas are completely different. I think that, and even between the buildings, there are similarities and differences. So that's really interesting. And then add in Mount Pleasant, and even the Bull O'Sullivan studio in Littleton is, of course, an intercoastal environment as well. So there's plenty to explore along the coast. I would say, I think it's a great opportunity to reflect on the university's history, because the university is 150 years old this year, and they're celebrating their anniversary. And so, of course, you can go to all the buildings at Tiki Toiora at the Art Centre and see all of, I think we're opening 9 buildings. Of course, that's where the university first opened in the 19th century, the oldest building there is 1877, so that's a Mount Fit. And then you can go and see some of the more recent buildings on campus as well, and some modernist gems on campus as well. Plus, the Macmillan Brown Library are opening, one of your favourite haunts, and they're letting people behind the scenes, into the archives, and they're pulling out some Warranamani drawings, and part of that celebration of Miles and Maurice that we're doing this year. And we're doing that, of course, because they've both died now, so it seemed appropriate to just pause and remember what they've left us. And then at
Schneiderman House.
And yes, the Schneiderman House that booked out also really quickly. That's the thing about the limited opportunity visits. Some of those buildings is that they're snapped up pretty quickly. But the Schneiderman House is incredibly generous of the owner to let us in. She spent a long time, tending to that house.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, part of that celebration is an evening event at the Town Hall on early evening on Saturday, the 6th of May, when we're showing excerpts from an unfinished documentary about Miles and Maurice, and then having some quickfire talks from a variety of architects and clients who've restored buildings, not all since the earthquake, but most since the earthquake. And there are a variety of buildings. There's 8 different people giving quickfire talks about the work they've done, because it's a legacy first has to be created. So we'll hear from Miles and Maurice themselves in this unseen documentary footage. And then, of course, the legacy has to be sort of maintained and cared for it to be sustained. And so we'll hear both sides of those stories on this evening program at the Town Hall, which is 5:30 on the 6th of May, sorry. We've got 2 evening events in the program this year. We've also got an opening night event at Te Pūna Wanaka at Ara, which will be really special as well. That's 100% tangata whenua on the stage talking about Māori art and architecture and design in the city today. Lots of different Māori architects talking about their work, including Perry Royal. So that should be really good. That's on the Friday night. And then I have to say one last favourite. I mean, there's so many, but I would say the Canterbury Provincial Council buildings. Of all the visits we've done since we started building this year's program, that's probably the one that's moved me the most, because it's a building I simply have not been in since the earthquakes. And it's still an earthquake-prone building that's still a partial ruin. And the Christchurch City Council are being incredible and letting people not just behind the fence, but you will get to go into some parts of the building as well. Fully booked, I'm afraid. But that's just blown me away. And it was so moving to visit and sobering, because it's a partial ruin and it still needs restoration. But amazing to be there, because in some ways, even though it's one of Mountford's earlier works, it was one where he tested lots of different ideas. And it also, like the stone chamber, when it was actually there, not collapsed, was possibly one of the finest interiors in the whole of the country. It was just phenomenal. This rich high Victorian polychromatic interior, painted timbers, and tiled walls, just beautiful. And there's been nothing like it. Of course, that roof collapsed, and you can't get in there even on our tour. But just being in the place and hearing about it from heritage experts will be amazing.
Yeah. I must have been in there when I was younger, but I can't remember it.
Yeah, you will have been.
Yeah.
I think if you grew up here, a lot of us ended up there at some point.
Yeah.
Peter Bevan and Don Donathorne both had their offices in there when the earthquakes hit. Peter was actually in the building and, made it out, thankfully. No one died in there. A lot of people know it from going to the Belgian Beer Cafe when pre-quake, which was at the Ministry of Works extension end that was put in the 1940s from memory. But that's what anyone who was here pre-quake who'd been in the building would have gone to the Belgian Beer Cafe probably the most.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so is it all volunteers that are opening the doors, or?
It's a mixture. A lot of our building partners are there, so at nearly all the buildings, people are leading tours or letting people in from the owners or occupiers. So if you go to 65 Cambridge Terrace, the team from Athfields are great at hosting people and telling people about the history of the building. But in some places our volunteers are running tours. So if you want to see, say, into behind the scenes of the creative residencies in the Arts Centre and get up to the balcony with the best view, then a team of our volunteers will be taking you up there to see. So there's an amazing creative residency space in Te Matatiki Toiora, the Arts Centre, and it seriously has this balcony with this amazing view of the whole of the Arts Centre. And you can just book a free tour with one of our volunteers. So our volunteers are amazing. We have over 60 of them, and they turn up over the weekend to welcome people and answer questions, and to just host people and count visitors and things like that. But some of them also lead tours. Right. So they absorb a whole heap of architectural information and then regurgitate it on the weekend. Yeah, they're really incredible folks.
Oh, well done. Now,
is it the Schneiderman House, the thing you're most looking
house.
forward to?
I've been trying to get into that house for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
there's
it's a
classic.
classic.
Schneiderman House too.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
That's also Warren and Mahoney. So that was the batch.
Must have been the batch. Yeah.
Must have been the batch. That's interesting.
I've been through that.
You've been through that because it was quite a fractious relationship between the architect and the client.
Was it? Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, that was not an easy one on either side, apparently. That's what I've heard anyway. So it's interesting that they did too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, given the relationship. Wasn't straightforward.
I wonder what was first.
I don't... Can you remember the year of the Akaroa one?
No, I can't.
Yeah.
The Angus Tate is pretty amazing.
Yeah, if people haven't been, definitely go to the university to check out the Angus Tate. It's a really simple little building, but it was... It's got a lot of character.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of that kind of modernism left. So it's well worth checking out. And of course, it was one of the earliest buildings on campus that wasn't built for engineering. Certainly one of the oldest remaining buildings, seeing the university demolished a good amount of the engineering block that was the first thing built, purpose-built building on campus.
Now, we're just about to run out of time, but so to get tickets...
Well, so people should go to our website, openchurch.nz, and have a look through the program, and hopefully there's some tickets left to what you want to see. Lovely. Certainly there are tickets left to some of the things.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks
That's
for
great.
having me.
No worries. Thanks so much for coming in.
Cool. Cheers, Nick.
No worries.